Okay, we're off and running then. February 25th, 2025. TCD Board of Supervisors work session. We have quorum here, not that we need one for a work session, but we do have a quorum at this point. David won't be here at all tonight, and I think Betsy will be apparently, so we'll see. But first thing up here on the work session is the topic list. We have the thing in front of us. Is there any changes to what we see here? Last minute additions or modifications? Nope. Okay, we'll go with this as written then, which means first up is our monthly staff report. Hi, Joey.
Hi.
So we're gonna give you about 15 or 20 minutes or so to tell us what you want to tell us, and we'll hold questions till the end if that's okay with you.
Yeah, either way.
Okay.
Might be a little clunky with the flow just because I'm having a little bit of PowerPoint issues, but it should be okay. But in the meantime, I'll pass these out. I got a couple little handouts. I'm Doug. I'm Joey. Nice to meet you.
You want me to help?
Sure. Everyone needs one of these. Basically.
Thank you.
I think Joey, I don't know.
I think so.
Well, there you
Yeah,
are.
busy
Meet
event.
again.
Yeah, definitely. Joey, nice to meet you. So I can sort of give you a little bit of background while we're getting this ready. So I'm Joey Burgess, Habitat Restoration Specialist here at the district. I have been lucky enough to be able to pursue within my role something like a specialization kind of. We're kind of how a lot of the staff here gets to do that. It's one of the greatest things about working here, honestly. And I'm really interested in monitoring and evaluation. Sounds a little bit boring probably to some people, but I'm really interested in the effects of our work. I think we do a lot of projects in this world and we kind of just walk away from them and we don't really understand what happened. And so I'm really interested in that. I actually was able to focus a bit on this field in grad school as well. And so now it's really exciting to kind of get back into it. And so last year I was given the opportunity to take on a monitoring project for the ASRP Early Action Reach Skookumchuck project. And so, yeah.
So we're sharing from mine.
Yeah.
Okay, so Sarah, can I go ahead and share?
Yeah, is it not letting you? Let me just double check. Sorry, Joey.
No, it's all good.
Very good.
Which one is yours, Joey?
I think you just want that one.
This one?
Yeah, then you'll pull up the Microsoft Edge thing.
Well,
Where was that presentation? Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
sneaky.
And do you mind pressing next for me?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna be reading my notes off my computer. Okay. So go ahead and actually I could do it.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm doing this on both screens here. So for a bit of background, the project is located on the Skookumchuck River south of Tenino, just upstream from the dam and the reservoir, right off Skookumchuck Road. The parcel is composed of mainly former pasture, but also has these winding areas of the river that are prime habitat for spring and fall Chinook, coho, and winter steelhead, as well as other fish like coastal cutthroat and rainbow trout. The site and the surrounding area are frequented by a variety of wildlife, including a large elk herd, deer, river otter, cougar, coyote, black bear, and many types of raptors. This was one of the first projects done under ASRP, and the board wanted a project with a rapid demonstration of program success. And TCD recommended this landowner, the Muellers. TCD acted as liaison between the landowner and partner agencies and was put in charge of all revegetation efforts, while the Department of Fish and Wildlife handled the in-stream work of strategically placing large wood throughout the river. Capital Land Trust has an easement on the property to the west, and some planting was done there, but most of the project took place on the Mueller property. There's also a CREP project at this site. If you look closely on your maps, they're the hash marked, not the white hash mark, but the kind of faint hash marks here are the old CREP plantings. Largely very successful, actually. So across the site so far, since 2020, like 40,000 total plants have been planted, tailored to each zone's individual characteristics and needs. The project was implemented with some, or can we get rid of this bar up here? Yes, no.
Just drag it up.
You can minimize the faces too. If you wanna,
Right, we'll live with that, it's okay. So the project was implemented with some innovative techniques, such as using a water-powered drill that was built in-house to create larger and deeper holes for using larger than normal live stakes. The idea here was to dig really deep, and to get to the water table because the previous regular size ones weren't working. They also tried different planting techniques like planting into coconut coir mats, as well as building piles of wood chip mulch around plantings. Another technique was trying potted stock, as well as bare root. These varying approaches.
sometimes technology is helpful,
There you go.
and sometimes it's not. You got your speaker turned on.
All right, we're back.
Yes.
So these varying approaches not only hedged bets on getting plants to survive by not relying on a singular method, but also provided a great opportunity to test what methods worked in various conditions. This brings me to my role in the project. So now you need to click next.
No, you still have the presentation open, I just have the TV.
Okay, cool. So in 2024, funding allowed for monitoring the project, so I conducted a survey across most of the site. The main questions that guided the survey were, what primary factors influenced survival and mortality in each zone? Which planting methods led to the highest survival rates? And what does the data point to for future management decisions? We basically wanted to get an idea of how the restoration was going, what's the current story at the site, and what we can do to make the next chapter of the story a productive one. So the methods were both, for vegetation data collection, was both quantitative and qualitative, using Esri field maps primarily, random number generator, so that people aren't self-selecting plants. They have to go follow the random numbers to get to the next sample. Each sample required measuring the height, width, and spread of each planting, and each sample also requires the qualitative assessments and photos too.
And what does Esri stand for?
You know what? I have no idea, but it's the primary
GIS people.
GIS company.
All right,
Yeah, they're like kind of a monopoly.
okay,
That's so funny. I've never even
that's
thought
good
of
enough.
They're like Madonna, you know? You just say their name and they're like, oh yeah.
So this screenshot here is showing the design portion of building the survey. So if you look real close, your copies have the actual survey, but this has a sidebar on it that shows how to build the question. So it's real tailorable, so you're not collecting extraneous data, especially if you're not gonna be the surveyor yourself. You wanna really tailor it to be exactly the data that you want to get. And this program really helps do that. And also soil samples were taken and analyzed for each zone. So now please take a look at the upper riparian survey handout. And I'll just quickly go through these questions just to give you an idea of which like what went into the survey. But although there are many similar fields on the zones we surveyed, each zone has unique questions suitable for the site. So this one is specific to the upper riparian zone that you can see on your map there. So just goes through surveyor name, species planted, the plant type, is it a conifer, deciduous, or a shrub? Growth and vigor was a general assessment of its health in terms of just good, bad, average, etc. And then they have a qualitative entry as well for each of these. If the plant was dead, I wanted to know what was the surrounding vegetation composition. So if you had that field, you'd press the drop down and you'd get 25% grass, 75% forbs, 50% grass, 50% forbs. A lot of a different matrix to choose from of what was surrounding the plants. Then it goes through height, kind of physical attributes that you'd need to measure yourself. I looked at regeneration if a new plant came up from our planting. Micro niches as well, like what's going on, is there a divot, is there shade at this site, if there's any individual features like that were unique, soil description, and then an assessment of the mulch treatments that were used. And so that's kind of a basic one, but just imagine doing that for 150 just for that one zone. It takes a long time. There's a lot of detail. So in order to ensure the validity of the survey, I consulted with a professor who taught me monitoring and evaluation. I was concerned about the capacity because the numbers I was getting here for having a 95% confidence interval and a 5% margin of error were a very high number of samples I needed to take, and that wasn't really in our capacity. So I talked to him and he said that it's okay to go down to this lower one, the 90% confidence interval, 6% margin of error, because we're just trying to get like next direction data, like what can we do better? It's not necessarily like population data. And so we're good to go with this smaller sample size. And even with the lower confidence interval and higher margin of error, we still had to do over 1,500 surveys. Or samples rather. Okay, so for data analysis, processing, interpretation, and visualization were done with ArcGIS.
Sorry, all the lights here.
Welcome. Can pass those down. To identify trends and patterns and to assess the health and functionality of riparian zones, ArcGIS and Excel were used. Field maps is a kind of like a sub program of ArcGIS. And the depth of analysis that you could do with it is just amazing. And I'm still very novice at this, so the data is still there. We could always go back to extract more from it. It has also, if we had more statistical software, we could probably go deeper as well. And then just time and capacity to teach an inexperienced habitat restoration specialist. With all this data and field maps, yeah, okay, so I said that. Okay, so now we're getting to the results. The upper riparian zone showed the highest survival rates across the site, most likely due to the proximity to the river and the higher water table. But it's also the zone that received these mulch treatments. I'm going to show you a few graphs and tables that show the various results for the site, just to give you an idea of what data is there. It's probably just, you're not going to have a relationship with this data, so just don't worry about like the nuts and bolts, but I just wanted to show you like what is in the survey results. So there's things like this, which are kind of simple, just average and maximum heights, average and maximum diameters. But that gives us a really good idea of what, how these plants are doing and what species to select for a future planting. There's also this one that I kind of came up with myself. It's a degree of spread and need for tube removal. So when you're assessing one of these plantings, sometimes you'll notice that they're really full in the tube, and when they become full, they can limit plant growth by crowding and creating environments for pests to thrive in there. And so I was seeing a lot of specifically roses and snowberry just getting demolished by bugs because they're all just like really crowded in there, but the foliage on top is looking great. And so it can kind of tell you what's going on. It's also an indicator of just plant growth and health to see how much it's actually growing. And most likely a stratified approach to tube removal is best, only removing them from species that are ready rather than going in and just removing all of the tubes in a given area. This is the health distribution by species for this zone. And so the red that you see, the more red you see, the more healthy the plants were. And so you can look at this and kind of get a good proportion of what each species did in terms of overall health after 3 or 4 years. So some look really good like this little spruce, and some look really bad like that rose over there that's probably got some herbivory happening and it killed the top of the plant. This is what I was talking about earlier with regeneration. It was counted to find out which species are thriving at the site to the point where they're making more of themselves. And across the survey, across the entire survey, roses regenerated the most. Snowberry, serviceberry, and salmonberry also regenerated at a higher rate than most other plants. Some general observations were that I found just from doing the survey, or that there's some intensive invasive areas that need to be approached. And so timing of maintenance might need to be changed a little bit. Weed management, shading effects were interesting because a lot of times they'd be completely shaded out by a grass or another plant, and the plant inside is actually doing really well. And it's kind of, sometimes the competition is a problem, and sometimes it's actually helping the planting during like tough parts of the year.
Right.
And then my last part of the results, kind of this little fun thing. It's kind of a fun and interesting way to look at qualitative data. Just aggregated all the qualitative observations for each sample. So anything that anyone actually wrote in there was aggregated, and like the larger the word is, the more frequent it was used by the surveyors. And so for this one, we can see that there was probably some foliage browning and crisping, and grass is just always a problem. I think everyone knows that. It's the main limiting factor for plant growth in this zone. So now that you made it through that boring slog of just kind of plant data, I wanted to show you a more interesting way that the data could be used. So mulching and restoration oops, I'm on the wrong one. There we go. Mulching and restoration can be complicated because of scale and cost. It takes time to prepare the materials to install and potentially to maintain or reapply. The scoop restoration site is an ideal comparison to see what works best because we did them both in the same zone. And I apologize for the photos, but it's best to see an unsuccessful planting as a reference. So the one on the left is the coconut coir. You can see the clear kind of square cut out. And the one on the right is wood chips that has since been overgrown. So the pros of coconut coir is it's relatively easy to install and comes apart more slowly than the wood chips, which maintains its weed suppression abilities for longer. The cons are that it's more expensive and still eventually needs replacement. The pros of wood chips are that it's very cheap. The cons are that the application is highly laborious and it needs reapplication almost annually to remain effective. So every time they were mulching these, they had to carry 2 5-gallon buckets to each planting. And there's thousands of plantings. It's crazy the amount of work that goes into the mulch. So these are just little goofy pie graphs that show it's a mix of both the qualitative observations of just how does it look, and then also another measurement of they're given a grass coverage matrix and they had to rate it as good, average, or bad, and it's a mixture of the two. And so floor mats were not as good as the mulch, essentially.
Mhm.
So wood chips show the highest percentage of healthy plants, followed by untreated plants at all, and then floor mats. Floor mats have a higher proportion of unhealthy plants compared to mulch and either treatment, and plants without either treatment have the highest dead percentage. So doing something is effective, but the question is it actually worth it? And in terms of survival, yes, it's very much worth it, but to really find out the answer, we need to combine this with a cost comparison for the labor and the materials.
Mhm.
But we're thinking we're going to be mulching going forward. One more way that this was used in a little bit more of an interesting way. Briefly, this is Lathyrus latifolius, the perennial pea vine. Sometimes we call it vetch. It's an invasive vine that smothers native plants in a variety of ecosystems, including shorelines and prairies. You've probably seen it really pretty, actually, in the midsummer, late summer, but it's a big problem. When surveying this area called the vetch patch is also on your map, this area is completely infested with this vine. But we have a big planting in there. And I was able to capture the effects of the infestation on plant health, height, diameter, appearance. Here's some examples from the analysis. So this is a bit of interpretation on this graph here, but we'll just go through one of them. And so this is the height graph. So the yellow bars show the heaviest vetch pressure, where the planting is completely overtaken by the vine. And the picture is a really good example of what you see out there. They literally just moved the tubes. The orange and red lines are medium and light pressure, and pink means no vetch around the plantings. And so you can see the infestation has a mixed effect on height depending on the species and degree of infestation. When looking at survival, if a planting had heavy pressure, it survived half the time. If it had light pressure, it survived 56% of the time. When no vine was present, the rate was the same as when it was being overtaken. What we are seeing is that in some cases, the vine is helping the plant by providing shade and protection from herbivory. This is especially noticeable in the conifer plantings, which have very strong health in this zone. And when looking at the soil tests, due to the perennial pea vine's nature of being a pea, this area has more nitrogen than any other, which is actually really good for the plantings. And survival there is not bad. It's just this management issue. So yeah, the infestation is actually a double-edged sword for the restoration plantings. Okay, I'm almost done here. Moving on to recommendations. So the survey results allow us to highlight what had best survival in each zone and what struggled, as well as what percentage to replace in each zone. And we actually used all this data to make our next planting plan accordingly. And 4,000 plants were just installed a couple weeks ago using this data. Information on maintenance activities like mowing, brush cutting, and tube removal can also inform future actions. Doing repeated monitoring efforts would help inform the timing of maintenance to maximize effects. I recommend dedicating maintenance time from the 3rd year on, going through the site and removing tubes from plants that could benefit. So not removing all of them, but strategically moving some. The survey has shown that certain species suffer when left in the tubes too long. And from attempting to sample the underplanting zones you can see on your map, I found that it is important to plan for future monitoring efforts by flagging and mapping plantings in unmaintained areas. These zones have existing tree cover but needed additional structure in the understory as well as diversity in the canopy. So many plants were installed in these areas but were not marked. Coming back in 3 years later makes it hard to distinguish what was planted and what existed there naturally. Now that monitoring is more of a topic for potential funding, we can take small efforts to build these into our work so that our work is measurable. Of course, there are a lot of lessons learned. This is my first big one for a riparian project. So a standardized general survey should probably be made that I do.
It's okay.
They just left.
Go ahead.
So a standard survey, I think would be better to do across the entire site. And then create a sub one for each survey so that it's more comparable. When I go to extract the data, it's kind of hard to match up the matching parameters when the surveys aren't all the same. Also, about halfway through the survey, I thought of how long it was taking and realized that it would be a great opportunity for interns or volunteers to get some ecological collection training, data collection training. This will be advantageous also for the data in terms of diversifying the qualitative sources, because this a lot was just me. And so after a while, your data becomes a bit skewed and monotonous. I had to add questions to many of the zones throughout the survey, as I found that certain questions didn't function as expected. And so I have a list of tweaks and redesigns that would help enhance the survey too. And now that this first one is almost done, I feel much more confident to take on the next large monitoring project. So I want to say thank you to TJ Taylor and the restoration crew because of their deep knowledge of this site. They were just the most impactful in terms of getting information about what went on there. The crew also for helping to survey dead plants and for surveying with me. Professor Larry Jerry for walking me through the survey protocols, and the Mueller family for letting us do this work. I'm very honored and grateful to be able to be part of this project. And then if this works, show you some wildlife I saw out there. These are some salmon just right in the river. That kind of works.
Yeah.
I am highly impressed with it, the functionality of the video. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, it never works over Zoom.
They can see them. Oh, cool.
And then
Very cool.
there's some river otters I saw this one morning just
Oh.
eating a salmon right on this log van.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh.
There were about 5 of them.
They're like, you built this for us?
It's true, we did.
Breakfast bar.
And then the last one are these male pheasants
Oh,
that were
cool.
kind of
Oh,
fighting
those are
each other.
beautiful.
Mhm.
And they're not really native, but
Yeah.
there's still habitat for them out
Pretty
there.
though.
And this is especially neat because we haven't always had capacity or interest or funding to do monitoring. We've
Yeah.
struggled to get that forever. So it's super great. Thanks to Joey, who was passionate about this project and put this together, this framework together, and is interested in helping us do that again in the future. Like Joey mentioned, it definitely hones our approach to things and helps us remain adapted to new pressures and things like climate change. But also TCD is taking on larger and larger scale restoration projects. And so this is really useful information to keep us current and localized, and definitely demonstrates the power of voluntary conservation. So lots of data, big impact. Thank you, Joey.
All right, thank you. Any
Thank you.
quick questions? We're a little behind time.
I
but-
know,
Sorry,
really,
it's-
really quick, after you've taken the tubes off, do you do anything to protect those plants? Do you put caging around them or anything, or you just leave them go? Did you do any irrigation at all out there?
They did.
Oh, on all of that?
There's a nice
Okay.
setup in there.
Okay, that's the other one, and then are you finding out that you need to plant during the different times of year now because of the the change in the climate.
Yeah,
Okay, cause I did a planting on my property and lost more than half, but they told me, this is DNR, not to water. It's a long story, but I won't go into it. But anyway, thank you. That was awesome.
thank you.
I learned something. Those are always good.
Just a quick question. Source of funding for this work is what?
It's, I think it's ASRP, Skookumchuck, EAR, Skookumchuck.
Okay.
Yeah, all of the funding that we're getting through the Office of Chehalis Basin,
Yeah.
so it's large scale restoration, but the funding is much more innovative and flexible than we've ever seen restoration funding in the state of Washington.
Hmm.
So it's allowing us all of these new adaptive opportunities to learn new things, to try new things, to offer new incentives to folks. And so there's a lot of potential in the future to continue to do major scale restoration projects, and you can bet we have some cooking.
Cool.
All right.
Very nice. Good job.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for bearing with probably the worst behaving technology scenario that
We got
we've
through
seen.
it.
Sorry I took so long.
No,
okay.
thank
It
you.
was interesting. It was worth having.
If you want to pop out boys sometime, I was in charge of DNR's cooperative bank and evaluating research.
Oh, really?
So, yeah,
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
Forest Service.
I'll bug you with lots of questions.
All right, we are gonna move on then.
I'm gonna
to-
move over there. My ears weren't working really well.
Okay,
I'll help you.
next item up here is annual and strategic planning.
Sure. So I think with this conversation, I want to share a couple of things with you. If you'll remember at the last meeting, I said, take a peek. If you got time, think about things, and come ready with some conversation or points of discussion. In the meantime, what staff have been doing on the back end is building a data tracking system in Smartsheet. So we've had intake systems that have developed over the strategic planning phase, and now we need to aggregate them all and push them together to start to get this cumulative data. So we're doing two things, just as a reminder. We're extending our strategic plan to cover this year and then developing the annual plan to cover this year. So those are two things at once. I'm going to show you what this looks like on the back end. You guys are used to normally seeing the annual and strategic plan Word document with the metrics in here. But because I'm proposing that we revise the strategic plan, I'm going to show you the back end template first, and start to talk about some of those elements and just give you an example of the work that we're doing on the back end. Also to reconcile any sort of data discrepancies. We've come up with some as our tracking systems have changed and become more sophisticated over those years, and points that we have to go back and say, hold on, this isn't right. Something's wrong here. We need to look into that one. So thankfully there's not a lot of those. So that's nice. But there are some.
So just to clarify, you said revising the strategic plan, is that our current plan for the next year or the next 5-year plan that we're gonna work on?
This is the current plan
Okay.
for the current year. So it ended in 2024 and
Right.
what we,
So this is year 6 of our 5-year plan, and we're making some tweaks for that final year of the existing plan.
yes, and
Okay.
my approach so far has been two things. One, let's get this plan done and complete so we can spend a lot more time and resources on our forward thinking plan approach. And two, let's think about things, because we only have 1 year left of this plan, right? After we extend it, let's think about it a little bit conservatively so we can hit those benchmarks and move on to the next piece, because we only have 1 year of time. So bear with me. Hopefully this works. Maybe stop sharing your screen, Sophia.
So why do you say we don't have, it says 2020 to 2025, it doesn't go through 2025?
No. I mean, sure. It does say that on the top. I think the intent is that it was for 5 years though, so that's probably an error that it's 2020, 21, 22, 23, and 24.
Yeah.
It
Oh.
began at the start of 2020.
Until,
Start of 2020.
yeah,
Okay,
until,
okay,
which
got it.
I see on there is really misleading.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
This back.
No, can you just push the square and it'll it'll
That
expand
one?
the window, yeah. Just push it one time. There we go, okay. Um. Yeah, well, hopefully some of you have computers while the screen is misbehaving. So this is what our tracking system tool looks like. This is something that eventually the intent is that you will have either a link to this or a link to maybe an easier to read version of this on your board portal so that you can look from year to year in our new strategic plan and see what our annual plan targets are versus our actuals, and then also see what our cumulative data is. So I think that that's a new element for the board that might give you a better sense of where we're at in terms of accomplishing our goals than ever before. So what I'm doing is moving through this, and I don't necessarily think we have time today to really robustly go through this, but what I can do is send a link out to this for the board to kind of review what my proposal is. And or if this is too unwieldy, I can transfer it into the Word document now, but I kind of wanted you guys to take a look at it and see what my proposals were. So I'm doing two things in this, and I want to orient you to this space a little bit because it might not be intuitive. You see here, these are our strategic plan metrics. These are our goals that are outlined up here. I don't pay too much attention to the pre-2025 data. The things to pay attention to is our cumulative target in our strategic plan and our cumulative actual in our strategic plan. And then what I'm proposing for our annual plan is here in 2025 target. And if I'm proposing a revision to our strategic plan, it's here. So it's directly underneath each of these columns.
Okay,
And
Oh,
Doug,
there we go, we're back.
Doug,
It's going dark.
there are numbers of different color here. Can you see those or do they need to be?
Yeah.
That's on my list is, can you see red against brown and pink?
This distinction looks okay,
Okay,
but like yellow on white.
not,
Or dark blue on black, so.
okay. Yeah, thank you for making sure we hit that, Ben.
And there are numbers of different colors. Can you tell the difference between the numbers or do you need a different font?
It all looks.
Why is it
black.
doing
No,
that?
Yeah.
Can I have the HDMI cord? I don't know
You
what's.
might need to change fonts.
so when you send this to us, will you also send us that, I mean, the brief rundown of what?
Yeah,
you just
what
said?
you're
Okay.
looking at.
Yes.
If this feels accessible to you, if this does not feel accessible, I can have staff
Yeah,
transfer this revision into the Word document template that you're most familiar with.
I like the way it looks.
This
Yeah,
is just
that-
easy.
it Looks.
Okay.
I think it'll be easier to read.
Because I think what you're gonna see too is as you run down this, you're gonna see notes in the notes column that I've put in here, because some of the things we've completed, right?
Yeah.
We've already completed those tasks. Some of them I'm not proposing we put in the annual plan, because, you know, maybe we don't have funding for that this year. Let's move down here just a little bit. Any of the ones that you see these yeses in, those are qualitative goals, and it means, yes, we should put them into the plan. Yes, we're gonna do those things. So like help landowners navigate regulatory processes. Yes, we always do that. It should be in the plan. And then you'll see too where I have some comments on the side about and this will give us some time to go back to some of these data points and just hone in on it. Hold on just a second. This is missing that one project. Why is it missing that one project? But it also will give my recommendation when I feel like an item might just need to be removed from the strategic plan. So for example, in here, there's a few things that are like, facilitate 5 conservation easements independently on properties. Well, the district didn't choose to become a land trust and facilitate those things, or the district is working in a different capacity to facilitate. We might have 3 goals around easement support for other partner entities. And so I'll say this is the one that's most accurate. I would remove these. So I'm proposing that we not just extend the strategic plan, but that we revise it to be accurate to the reality that we've experienced at TCD, because some of the metrics are kind of, we went a different path for sure on some of these things. They're sort of older ideas.
So I'm struggling here about board role, staff role on some of this, because I think the board identified the broad objectives
Mhm.
and some of the subpoints within the strategic plan and, but in terms of targets and stuff, that's really staff level, whether we can do 20, whether we can do 50.
Mhm.
So when I'm thinking about this, I'm just looking at, are you proposing anything to the change? Are you proposing to change anything
Okay.
about stuff we approved?
Yes, okay,
The target stuff, if you think it needs to be changed, I mean, I think that's your job.
the metrics.
It's more about the policy. If we're proposing changes to policy, then that's something we should pay attention to.
Mhm. So then what I would propose is that I don't send you this back end
Yes.
matrix. What I send you is the Word versions. And I will include strike throughs on the ones that I'm proposing we remove, and then you have less things to remove.
All right.
Yeah, that, and it's more appropriate for our role too. Try to keep
That's
that
helpful.
I think
division.
that's good. Another subtle distinction is when you don't make a target, just say we didn't make it because we couldn't hire staff or because the feds put our money on hold or something, whatever the reason is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the nice thing about the strategic plan being a living document is I can provide that to you guys, like, hey, we actually, someone else decided to recover the Olympia oyster and we decided not to because someone else did, and I can provide that justification in that
Great.
information that I send to you, and then we can remove it, and then we have a strategic plan and a reflective annual plan that's really accurate to what TCD is accomplishing as an organization.
And I think your comments are about strike through and underline for additions and subtractions. That's for me, that's important because I went, okay, we'll change this, but I don't remember what it was.
Right.
Yeah, I will really, because there will be fewer of those types of revisions than the numerical revisions. I'll really call them out and highlight them for you guys, so it's pretty easy for you to skim through and see
Okay.
those.
That's perfect.
Yeah, and if there's anything really strange, please make sure we don't miss it.
Yeah, I can do that. I can put a cover sheet or another memo on it if there's some weird things that are happening that we're seeing. So far, there isn't. It's just a lot of cleaning up of this, and we have a great new tracking system now. So that's great. We will do that and have it out to you before the next meeting so that if you have any final comments or revisions or anything, we can
I've
do
found
that.
some little tweaks to wording and so on. Should I, after I look at what you send, shall I let you know what they are?
My recommendation would be not to do that in this plan, but to do that in the next plan. Like when we generate a
Oh.
new plan to focus that
Okay,
level, we're trying to tie a bow on this one and move on
Okay.
to the next one.
okay.
Yeah. Does that
Okay.
feel good?
That feels good.
That feels good.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so that moves to item 4 then, WACD Ledge Day debrief.
Yeah. Now here's how we play the game. Sophia, I'm gonna have you try this again because I can't pull up any notes or anything, which is why I don't have that normally. Let me peek behind the curtain of Oz over here. Doug, do you want to share anything right off the cuff?
I was trying to remember what Ruthie's last name is.
Peterson.
Ruth, okay, that's what I thought. Ruthie Peterson is Bond's, Senator Bond's basically chief of staff. And we met with her and another lady whose name I don't remember. But prior to that, we met with Matt Hall, who's a new representative. And his administrative assistant is a guy named Greg. So we went from him to Bond's office, and then out in the foyer, in front of the building, this guy comes up to me and I recognize it as this Greg. It turns out Greg is Ruthie's husband. So I had a good conversation with him about Paul supporting CDs for about half an hour. He was very talkative guy.
That's
It was kind
awesome.
of serendipitous.
So overall, we had fewer appointments on this legislative day, mostly due to WC logistical scheduling and personnel things. But the conversations we had were longer and more in depth. I think Doug and I had to divide and conquer during some of it because of who was available for what purpose. I think I sat in Senator McEwen's office with his legislative aide for like 45 minutes to
How
an
was
hour
that?
just to chat. It was great.
Okay, good. Just
It was
wondering. Okay.
Yeah, Rob and I get along well and talk about all kinds of things, shoreline conservation
Okay, good.
and great conversations around that. And being from the 35th, we really talked about the Conservation Education Center and rates and charges bill. We did get to meet new representative in the second, who was overwhelmingly supportive of conservation districts and lives in Pierce County and uses the Pierce Conservation District equipment rental program and does that. So overall, again, just really great feedback to TCD. So far, pretty good support for things like the rates and charges bill. I'll get into that sort of legislative component of this in a minute. And a lot of interest and excitement around the CEC project. So we're just seeding and sprinkling that at every minute that we get, because I'm going to come back to some of these folks in a little bit and ask them for letters of support for our congressionally directed spending application. So they know that it's coming. On that note, we have some upcoming legislative appointments with the 22nd district. And so if anybody is interested in participating in those, let me know and I'll make sure that you have all the information about where to be and when. Doug is interested.
I'm interested. I need to see the dates.
Yeah,
Sure.
just got some of the dates out and we'll see who
Perfect.
Yeah,
can
who can do it?
participate.
Perfect.
Please.
And let me know. So one of them is just so you know, one of them is on Thursday and it's a virtual appointment. And
This Thursday?
yes.
Hmm.
And if we have more than 2 of you, we're gonna need to get a notice of quorum out. So just keep that in mind.
Who's that meeting with?
Partially,
Oh, partially.
yeah. Partially is Thursday, and then Bateman and Dolio are not till mid-March, and those are in person, so.
I would probably do that one. Thursday's not gonna work, but Bateman and
Yeah,
Dolly.
just send the dates and times out and we'll figure it out from there.
Perfect, and then, so I will definitely do that. The rates and charges bill is obviously still a point of conversation, partially, was one of our supporters in committee and helping that move through the House, which is wonderful. Obviously, the budget, is still a conversation that's happening. Sprinkling the CEC and, reminding folks that we're gonna come with a letter of support for a congressionally directed spending application. Last year, when we did our legislative tours, Senator Bateman's office, maybe even 2 years ago now, running, had said, hey, I think Senator Bateman would be really excited to sponsor a legislative appropriation for the CEC in the future. So we're not asking for one right now, but when we start to consider that, that is one that we want to pull in state funding for, of course. And so being strategic about engaging Bateman's support now, I think would be great if they're also interested in running, supporting our legislative ask in the future. Any comments or questions, thoughts about that? And then I just want to give you an update about the rates and charges legislation.
One thing, so have you talked with Daniel Palthorpe lately about congressionally directed spending? Because I have heard that that might be axed.
Yes, I've talked to him lately. We postponed our meeting from last week to see if the notice of funding was gonna fly. We have a meeting tentatively scheduled for next week in anticipation that hopefully it will be out by then. We've kept in conversation with Patty Murray's office and Glusenkamp Perez's office.
Okay.
Both have standing meetings, both are operating as if it's coming. And they're gonna let us know if it's not. So far, you know,
Okay.
it's everybody's comment is, well, it's too early to tell. We don't know until it does or doesn't
Right.
happen, but yeah.
He's contacted me on some other subjects, but we haven't set up a time yet. We've traded calls this morning.
Yeah.
So if I said, have something different from the time you're talking to, I'd like to talk with you to make sure I say what's in line with what we're thinking.
Yeah, Daniel Palthorpe in particular is really excited about this project and mentioned that this was one of his priorities to see through the gauntlet of applications. So we're really grateful for his partnership. Staff have prepared, like I mentioned in my ED report, the application materials, you know, it's the same sort of questions scenario usually. And so Daniel's gonna be meeting with us to review that. And I think we'll still continue forward with that meeting, even if we're hearing that there may not be congressionally directed spending, just so that we have the package ready to go and we can deploy it when we need to.
Before we go to rates and charges, I forgot to mention two things. One is we got to meet in the Columbia Room, which is in the basement of the Capitol, which was way better than milling around in the old library, the cafeteria.
Yeah, it was a great anchor to pull staff and folks in at the legislature, which we've never had before, but always wanted. And TCD and some other conservation districts set up displays and
Yeah.
had information, and so folks got to come
Conservation
in.
donuts or
Cupcakes.
cupcakes.
Mhm, mhm.
And the other thing, and we missed an opportunity, the surfboard people were evidently meeting too, and they came down to the Columbia Room. But if we had coordinated that prior to that, that would have been a good thing. But lesson learned there.
We got to see
Yep.
a lot of friends that day. Really quickly on the rates and charges bill, right now they're sort of taking a pause as they're working on getting all of the budget fiscal items done by the end of this week. We're anticipating it'll go to the floor next week though, for a vote. Right now in the House, the bill remains the same as written about localizing the cap. In the Senate, there is just a slightly increased cap that's been added, an amendment to the bill, which is not what districts and the committee is supporting. They're not supporting the Senate's revisions to that. However, everybody is going into this again, eyes wide open, anticipating that we may not get through with a let's just localize the cap conversation. And so right now, the committee has provided feedback to WACD and the lobbyist that a flat cap of around $30 per parcel, regardless of population size, is the next counter argument in negotiations to enter. And so we'll see where that goes. Overwhelmingly, this is this bill as written, and then the fallback option as proposed is supported broadly across the conservation district community, large and small, east and west, except for one district. So just to be aware that there has been some strong concern shared by Skagit Conservation District, who coincidentally does have rates and charges, to the point where they are considering at their board meeting tomorrow drafting a letter against the bill to send
What's
to the
their
legislature.
concern?
What is it?
They do not believe in increasing taxes. And they are comfortable with the funding that they personally are receiving levels, and they feel like they are providing the community service appropriate to Skagit
Okay.
County.
Great, then they can keep doing that.
That was
Exactly.
brought up,
They can't stop the other.
that was
everybody else
brought
from-
up by a lot of people.
Well, I don't think it's
Okay,
gonna go
anyway.
anywhere. All right.
So just so that you're aware that that is one element of contention, and there were a lot of people that said, could you just do no harm and let us do this, and you did that, and that was not, it did not fly. So there's potential that there'll be communications coming back to those districts that have been working on supporting this legislation, of which we are one of them. So
Yeah, okay.
just an FYI. Any comments or questions about that?
Just to clarify, they do understand that it doesn't force them to do anything.
No.
Okay. All right, let's move on. Unless there's anything else on that, no? Okay. Thurston Regional Planning Council representation. So a few years ago, we decided to rejoin the Thurston Regional Planning Council. We had dropped our membership for a number of years, or at least for some period of time. And when we did that, we said it would also, we're associate members, we're not full members. But it would be good to have somebody go to those meetings and report back to us, since we're spending money on it. And Helen Wheatley did that. Helen's not here anymore. It hasn't been here for a year, and it occurred to me, and David no longer goes on a regular basis. He was kind of representing the tribe, but also he would bring information back to us. Well, he's not going to the meetings either. So the question on the floor is, do we want to continue to be members of TRPC? And do we want to have someone who goes to those monthly meetings that can bring some information back to the board?
How effective was it when Helen was involved?
I felt like we knew what was going on. I won't say that she had any influence at TRPC necessarily. I think she brought comments and perspective to them, which they needed to hear. But I think the more useful thing was coming back and telling us what was happening at TRPC, and, you know, anything that we need to put on our radar.
Sure.
I think another factor is when we did it the previous time, it gave us recognition within the community.
Yeah.
I mean, those folks knew
Sure,
who we were
they
then,
knew.
and we were a lot lower profile than we are now.
Yeah.
So I think it's very, very beneficial.
And when are these meetings?
They used to be on Friday mornings, I think like 9 o'clock. I don't know if that's still the case, but that's
And how
that's
often are they?
monthly. Once a month.
Let me just double check.
So I'm currently on a working group, the longest name, climate resiliency and biodiversity corridors with the, planning commission.
The county planning commission?
Mhm.
Okay, so that's different than TRPC.
It
right?
is, it is. I'm just thinking about my commitment.
Got it, yeah.
But I've been thinking about it.
Well, we don't have to resolve this tonight. If you want to give it some thought,
I will
I
give
know
it-
I can't take it all.
I'll give it some thought.
Okay,
I do want to kind of know, yeah, is it once a month, Friday mornings? What would the commitment be? Let me,
And
It
I think
does look
so
like it's
important. I'd be
working.
willing to do it too,
oh,
but we
great.
could do an alternate thing or something.
Yeah.
oh, that
Okay.
would be lovely.
okay,
'Cause-
I could do that.
What did you say?
Alternate, like
Oh.
he would go and then
Oh.
yeah.
Or
Then if
how-
we share it, I wouldn't
I
feel
think,
like,
and there'd be value, because then they see multiple faces from our board too. I think that sounds
I'm
great.
taking you up on that if I.
Well, it might also be something, so I'm stepping down and
Yeah.
Susan Kravitz has agreed to apply for my position, so it might be something she's interested.
Yeah,
in.
and we revisit all of these,
Yeah, yeah.
interjurisdictional assignments
Yeah,
once we have a new board recomposed in May.
Okay.
So,
All right, well, I
but for
think
now, if the two of you wanted to try to plug into that for the next couple of months, that would be useful.
Yeah, I mean, it'd probably be smart. I think having a face or in there, so.
Well, I just remember one meeting where Virgil Clarkson was on one side of me and Mark Crouch was on the other side of me. And said, "We're glad you're here." With Mayor Lacy and.
Well, you're going back a long time talking about Virgil and Mark. That's when I was on the council. That was a long time ago.
It's largely the first Friday of the month at 8:30
Oh,
AM
yeah.
and it lasts until about 11.
Couple, 2.5
These
hours.
meetings,
Did you say that once?
yeah, that's long.
I know it
First
is.
Friday of the month, 8:30 AM until around 11 is what it's saying.
Oh, gosh,
Okay, so you,
All right.
you and Doug
We'll
can
figure it
coordinate
out.
on that
Yeah.
one and.
Okay.
Great.
Sounds good.
Official letter of designating us as the representative from TCD too. I don't know.
Okay, I'm thinking about it though.
Yeah.
Okay,
But maybe for now, just kind of keep it informal, the next couple months, go see what's happening.
okay,
And then when we reform the board with the new member in May, then we can decide on a permanent
okay,
situation.
sounds lovely,
Awesome.
perfect.
Okay, let's move on then. We're almost at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, we are.
And we still have a couple things here. So CEC,
I sent out an email update about that.
Yes,
I don't
you
think
did?
we need to
Yeah,
cover that in the work session.
that's
Yep.
what she said in the email.
that's what it said, okay? And then long-term funding committee,
Yeah, so we do have a long-term funding committee established, which we mentioned at the last meeting. TJ and David has agreed. He's not here unfortunately tonight. He had some personal business. He's out of town. We have our first meeting scheduled on March 11th. Very excited about that. In the meantime, I've been polling other conservation districts in light of the federal funding scenario to see what they're doing, what types of analyses, where their funding diversification is, what types of messaging and communications they have. We're also polling partners and grantors that have federal funds that come to us to see what their level of concern or certainty or risk in the funds that pass through is. So I'll have some of that information to share with the subcommittee. Susan is going to be our staff representative on this, and we'll pull others as needed if we need to do more complex analyses, like Yen, if we need to do some more financial forecasting, which I'm planning. So yeah, at this point, you got some of my other sort of funding related updates via email, and we're just watching. We're watching all the things and pulling in all of the data. So anything else
Awesome.
that you want to add to that?
oh, I think that's where it stands, and we finally got our first meeting set, so.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, thanks. That moves us to the last item on the work session, which is updates and announcements.
So I'm just gonna quickly, super quickly, the climate resilience and biodiversity corridors. So they set this up because so climate change was the #1 thing when they did the survey with the public back in 2023. And they had not put it in the comp plan. So none of it's in there. So there were 62 items that should have been in there for climate, the TCMP. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. I'm part of that. We're trying to get it back in there. They also changed the 12% growth in the rural area to, or 5% to 12%. So we're, they should have taken the planning commission's suggestions, and my people changed that. But anyway, we're running out of time. That's about it. I'll keep you updated.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's see, anything?
No. I mean, I was wondering if it's relevant. I contacted Sierra Smith because I'd heard that his job was cut.
Oh,
And this
Yeah.
is what he said, just a big old silence from REPI on the $2 million grant that is supposed to be funding me. So he does that farm program and,
oh, that's terrible.
we may partner with them and this may affect our ability to.
That is, yeah, so that's a contracting delay right now.
We hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of context there that's missing from that email. The funds are not frozen. We established an entirely new process pipeline and partnership to get the funds down here, which is taking longer than anyone anticipated, is more complex than anyone anticipated, is going through our local DoD partners for the first time in any kind of functionality, and that's providing new pathways that they have to develop. So it's just moving slowly. This is the first contract out of that new pipeline. And so they're finding all of the barriers and fixing all of the communication pathways. So I communicate with the REPI cooperative agreement partner, which is Eco Studies Institute, which is the pass through for these dollars regularly and really candidly on this. And there's not, right now, they are still working on the contracting process. They haven't halted that. It's just that it's
Okay, so
building
you
blocks.
think that program will continue? This,
At this point, yes, I'm
Okay.
on the executive leadership committee for this landscapes program with all of those folks. And we had a meeting last week and they said, yep, we're moving forward, still contracting. Just JBLM is also getting a new garrison commander and a new chief of staff who are the right people to say the right things at the right level of authority to move this forward quickly. They're not here. And so there's all of these side pathways in terms of logistics to try and get the funds down. I made another plug for NACD's cooperative agreement partnership because when we got a contract, we had the funds here in months. Easy, done. Everybody had their money. So anyway, a side note,
thanks.
All right.
yes. So I think it's coming, but the delay could affect his
Yeah,
continuity of his position.
Doug,
MACD is putting holds and pauses on a lot of stuff that's basically passed through from NRCS and other agencies. In talking with Lori Rides at the door, the state conservationist for NRCS, she said there's 32 staffers that are gone now. But several districts have picked up those staff, so that's a good thing. One of the perverted things that's in the back of my mind generally is when things go to hell, people start wars to divert attention, and that makes me nervous.
The only thing I have is there's gonna be a Thurston climate conference or convention or something this spring. And I've been asked to help put together a panel and to moderate a panel on soil carbon sequestration. No, not cool, because it's not my area of expertise, and I keep
Well,
telling them that. I keep telling them that. And I think it's just, they don't know where to even begin to get a handle on who should be on the panel and what should you talk about and that sort of stuff. So anyway, I'm still talking with them. I haven't committed yet. I'm glad they wanna bring soil carbon sequestration into the discussion.
Yeah,
But I don't really know how that's gonna happen.
I see.
So
All right.
Do you want recommendations for who might be available to support that?
send me some emails. That would be great.
and I don't know how much she knows about it, but Keith Fagerness is spreading biochar like crazy.
Mm.
He's getting it from somewhere. It's got mounds and mounds of them.
You know, so I
And
have mixed feelings about biochar.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying it
Just
might be
because of
some
how it's
created.
produced.
Yeah.
So, anyway,
Well, maybe that'll come up in the discussion.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
that's all I have. Last item, Sarah, do you have anything to
I will be
add?
so quick. I got a few things. One, we've been in communication with NACD so far. Nothing is impacting us. Yes, thank you, NRCS humans, for being here. You get a big round of applause. Anyway, there's been pausing and unpausing of lots of things. Again, so far not impacting us from the NACD side. The second thing is, the local working group meeting is next week. You guys got calendar invites about that. So feel free to join us. It's just gonna be virtual. We're hoping that will help increase some participation around the 5-county region. And yes, we're gonna move forward with it. It's gonna happen. We're gonna have the meeting. Again, for those of you, I mentioned this already to 2 of our supervisors, but I sent out some communications last week around the federal changes and just making sure that our staff know that TCD will always be a safe place to be at and an inclusive place and a place to do great work that we're passionate about. And share the board sentiments that you shared with us in January. And so I think everybody felt really great and respected and communicated with, and that sort of helped to calm some of the chaos that's occurring in the world. And we also reminded them to kind to themselves and be kind to each other and check in on our federal partners.
Very good.
Last thing is the TCD employee committee that's going to look at the CBA metrics. I think the staff have finalized who's going to participate in that. So just that's going to be coming for, we're going to schedule yet another subcommittee meeting to look and talk and think about those metrics. So if you're on that committee, start thinking about that now.
Can you remind me who is on that committee?
No, it's Mary Ann.
I know I am.
Yes.
I love metrics.
I need to look at my notes. It was
Okay.
one of you two and
Wasn't
Mary
me.
Ann. Okay,
No,
it was
it wasn't
Doug,
me.
it was Doug and Mary Ann.
Oh, it was Doug.
Okay.
It's me.
Thought it was Doug and Mary Ann.
Yeah, it is you, Doug. Okay, good.
Yeah.
We got it.
Okay,
He's like, what?
one more thing and then we're gonna wrap.
We have a plant sale on the 10th at 10 o'clock
Mhm.
at the fairgrounds.
The
The
10th?
first,
This
the
weekend
first.
first.
This Saturday,
Yeah,
We have a plant sale.
Yep.
yeah.
right.
You scared us.
we'll be there. Okay, with that, we'll end the work session. We'll take a little break here and then we'll start board meeting at
All right.
6:30.
Great.
If you want to come,
Look at that, it's 6:30. So we are going to call this board meeting to order here. Thurston Conservation District Board of Supervisors, February 25th. Obviously, we're recording the meeting. We have in the room with us, 4 of our 5 supervisors. David Ayala is not here tonight. And of course, we also have staff with us, Sophia and Sarah. We have our legal counsel, Ben Cushman from Deschutes Law, and other people who will introduce themselves as we move along here. So welcome, everyone. Let's take a look at our agenda here. Do we need to make any changes? Was there any questions about our agenda? I had one. We have an executive session on potential litigation. Is that real or is that the placeholder that we just put in there last
That was
month?
the placeholder, but I don't think we need it.
Okay. So we are going to delete item 8, our executive session. So with that, we'll need a motion to approve the amended agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Doug,
I second.
seconded by Betsy. We will vote on that motion. Doug, Betsy,
Aye.
Marianne,
Hi.
and chair votes aye. So we have an agenda. That moves us to the consent agenda. 3 items up on consent tonight. 2 that we always see, which are the minutes from last month and our financial report. And then the 3rd item here is the funding agreement with the county on rates and charges for the next 10 years. I would know. I was like, 10 years. So that's consent. We'll need a motion to adopt those 3 items.
I move to adopt the consent agenda.
Moved by Betsy. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mary Ann. So we will vote on consent. Betsy,
Aye.
Mary Ann,
Hi.
Doug.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. That has been approved. That takes us to public comment. This is the point at which any member of the public can address the board for up to 3 minutes on an issue that's on their mind that would also be of interest and relevancy to the district. I don't think we have anyone that wants to make public comment tonight, but I will ask, is there anyone that wants to make public comment? Nobody in the room, nobody online. So I will close public comment. And move to item 5, which is our partner report. And first up here are our friends from NRCS. Hello,
Hi, thanks for having us.
glad to see you.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Why don't you share with us what you need to share?
Sir, I'm good over here. Picking up.
I think we're okay.
Okay.
It's getting on the audio?
It's recording, yep.
Okay.
Very good. Yeah, hey, everybody, Deshelle Burnham. I'm the resource conservationist at the Olympia Field Office at the NRCS. I just wanted to do some updates on kind of where we are as an agency. I know there's a lot of stuff in the air. But we're still moving forward with our fiscal year 25 applications and rankings. Equip and Farm Bill are not affected at this point. We have the funding, so today or this Friday is our ranking deadline for Equip. So everybody's kind of hustling to get those in. And then yesterday was our CSP eligibility deadline, so we'll be working on those applications and getting them ranked within the next 8 weeks deadline. Act Now is ongoing throughout the year. We're still accepting applications for any of the programs as usual. But the Act Nows will, I think they'll be continuing to issue out funds as those come along. Update on IRA. Funds were frozen, but as of yesterday, we can move forward with the rankings. Anything that was ranked in IRA will be pending, and it's just depending on how things fall out with the budget. IRA's anything in the future is kind of uncertain. Existing contracts will still be obligated and moving forward, so anything that was contracted last year or the year before under IRA will still be able to pay those out to our clients, which is really good news. And then I just wanted to highlight our not really new, came out last year, but our organic transitioning program incentive. There's 300 million across the board that was put into the account, and this is to go towards strengthening organic farming markets and helping promote conservation and these organic farmers that are in need of financial assistance. I brought a little, I know more of that, but I guess nobody can see that. And that's really where we're at right now for our programs. I guess to be continued, and I brought a new colleague along with me, so I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Audrey Mechtenberg, and I am a new partner biologist with the NRCS. I work for a nonprofit organization called Pheasants Forever, which is a conservation organization across the country, and they have many farm bill biologists in NRCS offices across the country. And we hired 5 of us, I believe, across the state of Washington. So there's one other person down in Vancouver, as far as like the Western Washington group. And these are like relatively new positions, especially for Western Washington. So my job will be to kind of be setting up these positions with the NRCS, and I'm a senior private lands conservationist. So I'm going to be working a lot with our partners, networking and building up new project ideas. I'm going to be doing a lot of the planning of wildlife habitat practices with NRCS programs, but I'm also going to kind of have that like bigger picture focus, which is why I'm here today to introduce myself to the conservation district, because you were one of our strongest partners. I've already worked with a couple of your habitat folks and your forestry folks, and I think we're going to be doing a lot of collaboration with that moving forward. Sometimes, you know, we're gonna have to figure out like which, for all like the landowners that we work with the public, you know, like which program is gonna be the best fit for people, and kind of using a lot of everyone's like technical resources with your foresters, our planning and our programs. I'll be really involved with all of that. I'll just give a brief kind of more kind of like background into who I am, which is that I went to college at Western Washington University. And I've been focused in pollinator habitat so far up until, you know, this point in my career. I worked for Olympic National Forest. I did a lot of bumblebee surveys with them in college, and then I did a urban bumblebee research project as part of my like senior thesis project. So that's kind of I've been on the pollinator path ever since. I worked in Oregon researching pollinators on working timberlands. And then I went to West Virginia and I worked for the NRCS out there. So I did have pollinator habitat planning with NRCS in West Virginia. And now I'm taking all of this cumulative experience, bringing it back to Washington. Pollinators are still my thing, probably always will be. But I'm gonna have a broader like wildlife approach now. I do have a decent amount of like forestry background from some of the related work I've done in the past couple of years. So I really want to kind of take a deeper dive into the forest wildlife habitat and how we can promote that for small forest landowners. The pollinators are always popular with the public, especially in like urban areas and small farms. But I'm really looking to see like what other collaboration we can do to promote wildlife habitat in Western Washington. So I can give you all my contact info later today, and we'll just keep me in mind if you have projects, and we'll just kind of see what we can all do together.
Great, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How long have you been out here?
I
Or
started.
Rebounding out here?
Yeah, I started in mid-January, so I'm like really just a month or two in at this point.
Yeah, I've got some contact information for small forest landowners in the back room.
Perfect.
We'll make sure you get that.
Yeah.
It'll help you.
Okay, I love that.
Question for you, Michelle. So you said you're honoring the contracts that are in place and for, but yet we're hearing that NRCS is not honoring contracts like in the Midwest, and farmers who have put out the money are not getting reimbursed, and some of them are going out of business. So is that happening here?
I think
Are
it's
people
on a
not getting reimbursed in Washington?
As far as I've been told, our Washington contracts, at least from my area, it has been that we are moving forward with them. We'll be able to get those paid out, but I can't speak to the other states. I
Yeah.
think it's probably gonna be on, state by state basis.
Who would make, if it's a state by state basis, who makes that determination of whether a contract is being paid or not? The state conservationist or?
I mean, I'm sure it's coming from our chief of staff too. I know we just got a new chief of staff onboarded, so we're kind of waiting for more guidance on that. But yeah, I was told we could at least get those existing ones paid out and start ranking in IRA. So
It's like pretty new, like Friday.
I think it was it was like Monday, I think on our morning. That's yesterday. Yeah.
So as of like Friday/Monday of this week, that's when they like released the funds.
Okay.
So I don't know if, I did see like a lot of those articles about,
Yeah, as
larger
recently as
farms
last
in
week.
Midwest,
Yeah.
And it may have been tied up in different pool.
Yeah,
maybe.
and they were equip contracts that people are mostly not getting paid for, so
Equip.
Yeah.
Wow.
that's what I was reading anyway.
Uh,
Wisconsin Farmers Union, I think, put out something about that. So.
Yeah, I think I saw something about that too, and with SNAP and all of that, so. I mean,
Well, if
I
it
think
changes,
things are
you'll let
gonna be
us know.
changing, and who knows with the, next month. whatever
Or
comes out of
tomorrow.
the budget, but yeah. So I'll keep y'all updated as I know more or if anything changes, but.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I guess we'll move on then to our next partner report, which is State Conservation Commission,
Oh,
Mr. Josh,
that's me.
hello.
Well, good evening, everybody. Few things to just update you on, if, and you may already be updated on, especially the rates and charges bills. They're both, passed out of their fiscal committees and are in their, House of Origin. While these two bills started out identical, they did make some changes. The House removed the limitations on the treasurer. And the Senate did the same, but they also incorporated a cap on the per parcel rate, but it's at a higher amount, but they tied it to inflation. So we'll see where it goes from here. House of Origin cutoff is March 12th. So they need to be moving by then, and then they'll switch houses. You may have seen the food strategy bill introduced late last week. Cool bill. I think it's forecasting ahead of, maybe some conversations that could take place during the interim. A lot of times we see those things, they show up in a proviso somewhere, with kind of some of the direction that bill would have done. So I don't know if the legislature will have the appetite to do that in this budget climate, but I think that type of bill will continue to be a conversation starter, and it's a good idea, especially coming with kind of what we saw, the urban ag bill and food strategy bill. There's been some interesting ag bills this year that have some legs under them. So at least as far as intent and possibility in the future. We're gonna get Governor Ferguson's budget is coming out. He has a press conference Wednesday or Thursday at noon. And so we'll kind of see what comes out of that, but we are all kind of girding our belts, and the operating is gonna be where we're really gonna be looking. And so that's grants like, hopefully the implementation awards aren't affected, but livestock technical assistance, engineering, some of the other operating funds are gonna be the most vulnerable. And so we'll see. It's one stool, one leg of the budget stool that certainly has to inform the rest. I think I mentioned last time, I think the next budget forecast meeting is March 19th. And so, we'll start to see some more activity around there. What else do I have to say? There's a commission meeting in the neighborhood out at Grace Harbor, is hosting the commission meeting on March 19th. Oh, there's a tour on March 19th that Grace Harbor's hosting. And then the meeting is March 20th, and both are gonna originate out at the Connaught Casino in Ocean Shores. So there'll be an interaction dinner following the tour. Good chance to meet commissioners, meet folks and mingle, and hopefully some locals, some county commissioners, et cetera, are able to attend. But that's always a good time to hang out and get to know everybody. So other than that, I'll keep people posted as much as we know on the legislative and policy front and budget front. So that's it.
Thank you. Any questions for Josh? All right. Thanks for the update.
Yep.
That moves us to you, Doug, NACD and WACD.
WACD had a board meeting last night. They got over at 9 o'clock. After starting at 5:30, it was reminiscent of some bar for meetings, so it was not quite that bad. Some of what I think are high points, Lincoln CD, which is basically Republic, Ritzville area. They had an election and they did it themselves, and they sent out a one pager with the ballot on one side and CD information on the other, which was a good stroke. For about $6,000, the county was willing to do it for $40,000. So, and that didn't include postage and envelopes and stuff. So I thought that was pretty definitive. They also picked up a former NRCS employee who got ripped or basically laid off, not through the probationary period, which was a good thing. People are really nervous about the pause in federal funding and the uncertainty and all the other stuff that's going on that we read about in the news every 20 seconds, it seems like. For the treasurer's report, basically we're in the good. We being WACD, the Plant Material Center, which is the cash cow that WACD, don't please tell them I said that that was the cash cow, but it is, that's where WACD gets most of its money. They have a dip now because they haven't sold the plants because they haven't pulled them yet. So when that gets done, that'll be a big uplift. They're about 3 weeks behind because there was frozen ground for 3 weeks. There is going to be a spring legislative workshop co-hosted by the commission and WACD, and the tentative dates are in April and May. So they don't know for sure what, but still in the planning stages, probably at Ellensburg. One of the other things, and I suggested this about 10 years ago, why don't we see what Oregon's doing? Maybe have a joint meeting with Oregon. And has anybody ever talked to anybody in Canada? Do they do anything similar? Is there overlap there? So anyway, we're talking about a joint board meeting with Oregon, and I think that would be a good thing. We talked about the advocacy, the legislative data recap and rates and charges. WACD staff is looking at the 3 standing committees that we have because there's been really inaction, tribal, livestock, and recruitment. So they're trying to get, why do we have these committees if they're not doing anything? So they're looking at that. And that's the WACD portion. Questions on that? These meetings are way better. They don't feed us at those. Thank you, Sophia. NACD?
Yep.
Okay. Former Deputy Chief of the NRCS, Louis Aspey, is now the acting chief. You guys probably already knew that. I talked with him at the NACD meeting in Salt Lake City, and he basically said when we talked to him, when he addressed the whole audience, that he's got to be really careful what he says right now, because Crosby's gone, the former chief, and there's so much uncertainty. Nobody knows really what's going to happen, and it keeps changing. And the other compelling factor to me is the continuing resolution runs out on the 14th of March, so we'll see what happens there. Hopefully it'll be good news. On the 26th of March will be the fly-in. We're making arrangements now on appointments, and do we want to go a couple days beforehand and spend 3 days there, 2 days? Because we have 10 representatives and 2 senators and then agency heads that we talk with. So we got to get that organized, and it's not clear how many folks are going from WACD, Commission, and NRCS. Just a kudos to Keith Griswold from NRCS. He and I partnered 2 years ago. Amazing man. Really, he and I meshed together really well on getting our points across. So it's a good guy. We had 3 resolutions at the NACD meeting. One on transparency of the Forest Service Fire Grants Program. That's a cut to the chase and Doug version there. It was a little more detailed that. But fire grants transparency, signing in our CRP program plans without having read them. And FSA and NRCS staying in their respective lanes. FSA doing administrative / financial, NRCS doing the technical. That's the one I thought we were going to have trouble with. It flew right through, no problem at all. Designing the CRP plans without having hearing them, without having seen them, or even been consulted. They said, well, that's legal. You have to do that. We do it that way. You can't opt out of that. And I basically said, so when you bought your house, did you read the contract before you signed it? I mean, it's a no-brainer to me. Anyway, even though the legality being questioned, it did pass unanimously. So we'll see where that goes. There were 800 people plus or minus at the NACD meeting in Salt Lake City, 26 from Washington. And one of the things that was interesting to me was we toured an urban farm. Thinking of you, TJ. This particular farm partners with a social service agency to provide training for homeless women to get them off the streets, to get them some job skills and lined up for another job. They've got about 80% success rate on that. But that seemed like a really good way to partner with a non-traditional group, non-traditional for us, and helping people. And that's it, unless there are questions. I'm gonna brag for just a second. Okay, when I got there, it was $20 for an Uber from the airport to downtown where the hotel was. There's a light rail about 4 or 5 blocks from the hotel. I dragged my suitcase over there, got on the light rail to the airport for $1.25.
Good job.
And I mentioned that at our board meeting last night. People ought to be looking at public transport more.
Mhm.
Yeah, and they can, when they advertise these conferences, they could,
That's true.
say, here's where it is, it's easy,
Yeah, it's inconvenient dragging the suitcase and my coat and all that, but it
Good for
saves
you.
WACD money and it's the right thing to
It's the
do.
right thing to do.
And you got a little exercise.
Well, we can talk about that offline, but I do a lot of walking. The other curious thing was that we went to a demonstration farm. And the stumps that they cut, the trees that they cut, they carved the stumps into various shapes.
Oh, wow.
As a demonstration, it's pretty cool. I'm really done.
You mentioned the vote in Lincoln CD, which made me think of what you said at the break. Betsy was curious if we know how many ballots have been requested for our election.
I can get a good status update from you and send that to you via email. I don't have a real time handle on that.
I think we should all help spread the word.
Yep.
Yeah, it'd be good to know.
At least one.
2 from here.
Two from
Two
here.
from our house.
Right.
Did you guys vote? Better get you a ballot.
Not too late.
Well, we gotta outdo Lincoln. They had 1,600 votes.
Wow.
which is
Oh.
Really good. for
I think
them.
our last election, we had less than 300, as I recall, or right around 300. So, yeah, worked for you, I know, but.
I live in this.
Oh, okay, you can't do it.
1,600.
Okay, anyway, let's move on.
What's the cost?
Item 6, we have a resolution on local government investment pool. We talked about this last month. And we brought it back for action tonight after having all of our questions addressed. Is there any changes from what we saw before?
Nope.
Same darn thing we saw last month.
Yep.
Okay, so we will need a motion on this resolution.
I move to approve the TCD resolution number 2025-02 about our local government investment pool.
Okay, been moved by Betsy. Is there a second?
I think
Seconded
this
by
is just a really good stroke.
Doug. Yeah, it's good. Makes sense. We probably should have done it a long time ago. So, okay, with that, we'll vote on the resolution. Betsy,
Aye.
Doug,
I,
Mary Ann.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. That has passed. Takes us to item 7, which is just to take a look at what's coming up next month in work session and board meeting. Right, so there we go. So work session, our staff report is on our food processing and tool rental program. Right, and it looks like we have a community partner confirmed from Wolf Haven. Nice, okay.
We're gonna
And-
talk about anticipated wolf migration to Southwest Washington.
Oh,
Whole lot of conversation there.
Yes,
is there anything?
Yes, I called everybody already. We're gonna meet in March. What?
Is there anything happening in Riverbend? I mean, I haven't seen anything, so it's on there, but is there any action happening on that project?
I mean, at this point, I think that they're nothing monumental. Yeah,
We just kind of have it as a placeholder if we need it.
and I take it off if there's nothing
Yeah.
really to share.
Okay. All right, let's scroll down and look at the board meeting. It's, pretty much like tonight's board meeting.
Mr. Chair, because of the fly-in, the NACD fly-in, I may or may not be around for that meeting.
Got it, thank you.
And last time I recommended leaving 11 and 12 as a standing item, but let's take those off and put it in if there's anything we need. So
Okay, so we'll pull out potential litigation sessions unless we need it. But we will have a executive session on real estate next month.
I'm anticipating we'll have
Okay.
something executive session worthy.
All right,
I have a question. I don't know if it needs to be on the next agenda. I'm curious how the slaughter equipment rental is going since we basically cut the slots in half by only doing it once a week.
We will
Like-
have a staff presentation about that at the next meeting.
So they'll bring that part of it up. That's a part of it I'd like to hear about.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of considerations that have gone into that, and just shortly. We made that decision knowing what the frequency of use of the equipment was.
Okay, and I know you cut out farther away people.
Yeah, absolutely. The program has to be sustainable for us to operate, which was a huge piece in terms of capacity.
Yep.
And then also the cleaning and biosecurity component of that was.
Right, I remember the reasons. I just wanna know if people are
Yeah. I'll ask for
not
some
getting
real-time
access.
Data on that. I mean,
Yeah.
definitely anybody outside of county.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but. You know,
All right,
Yeah.
yeah, thanks.
all right.
Well, that would be interesting data, like how many people did we cut out so that now we have,
we can probably do some like averages over the last
Yeah,
few years.
yeah.
Okay, so we'll have that for the presentation next month.
We'll do it.
Okay. Anything else in these agendas for next time? No? All right, well, that then, because we don't have an executive session, was the last item on our meeting tonight, so. I would need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
I second it.
Moved by Marianne, seconded by Betsy. Let's vote on adjournment. Marianne?
Aye.
Betsy?
Aye.
Doug? Chair votes aye. It is 7 PM. And we are done.
Well done. Well
Thank
done.
y'all.
that seemed to go better than the WECD meeting.
He said.